Wise Wednesdays started on April 1st with a humble episode on forgiveness. Between then and now, we've had heart-led conversations on happiness, stress management, relationships, resilience, public speaking, respecting boundaries, self-discovery, mindset, just being, listening, reclaiming your life, intuition, and even food. I would like to thank all my listeners and the guests who gave me their time and trust. It is because of you that we kept going. It is because of you that we kept growing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much, and welcome to episode 72 of Wise Wednesdays with RK. My name is Ruqayya Khan. I am your host, and I am super excited to bring to you Ashu Khanna, who is the founder and CEO of Arka Leadership. She is an entrepreneur, a leadership coach, an author, a motivational speaker, and above all of that, an amazingly authentic and true to her soul person. I've recently acquainted with her, but it just felt like I've known her forever. So without further ado, I bring to you Ashu.
Good evening, Rukaya, and absolutely thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
so today's conversation, as the topic that we came to, decide was to listen to your inner voice, right? And when I spoke to you that day and we got into conversation, I just knew I had to onboard you for this, for Wise Wednesdays with RK. And before we get into the topic itself, tell us a little about Ashu, who she is, and what she does.
Uh, I am so many, I think, facets and personalities that you experience in one person. A friend, a wife, a mother, a guide, a teacher, a professional, a mad adventurer who loves trying new things all the time, fearless in her own way, sensitive, emotional. You got curious and how. Uh, yeah, so there are just so many things you can keep adding on. But yes, I think I've discovered all this about myself in the last so many years that I'm way more than what I thought I was. I associated myself just with my relationships, external relationships. And it's only as I started focusing internally did I discover that my deepest relationship has to start with me.
True that.
And the more I discover myself, the more I discover life and everything around me.
True, true. And I like what you say about it has to start internally, and therefore so important to listen to your inner voice. When I say listen to your inner voice, what does that mean to you?
Just being silent, and you can hear in that moment, you can hear that gentle voice talking to you. And you can hear it saying, telling you what is right, telling you uh, where to go and how to go next. It's our guide, it's our friend, it's our parent. There is a beautiful shloka which I'm going to say here.
Yes, please.
Tvameva mata, tvameva pita, tvameva bandhu cha sakha tvamev, tvameva vidya dravinam tvamev, tvameva sarvam mam deva deva. You are in everything. You are my parent, you are my teacher, you are my friend. And that is really what the inner voice is for me.
Hmm. And you said, when I asked you about voice, you said about silence. This is very interesting. Um, a lot of us go through life with so much of noise around us, so much of conversation outside and inside of us. So how do you actually get to that inner voice?
You very rightly said. You use the word noise, and I use the word voice. When there is noise, you cannot hear anybody's voice. It is just a clutter, clamor. Um, it's like, there's chaos and confusion. But when there is silence,
Mhm.
you can hear the little voice. You can hear call it the divine in you. You can hear it. And we all have it in us. It is not unique to you or me. It is there in all of us. And every scripture guides us to find it within us. See, that's the beauty of every religion, every scripture teaches you to silence that noise through its rituals, through its practices, through the scriptures. And those scriptures are timeless. Each time you read it, you get something new out of it. Each time you read them, you feel at peace, you feel centered because they're the holy words. And that's really what it is. Where did they come from? Is really from the inside of a person.
So when you say divine, uh, hi Piki, thanks for joining us. You said divine Indian. What?
No,
And
I didn't say divine Indian, divine within,
okay,
in
okay. So
you, the divine voice in you.
in you. Okay. All right. Sorry. No, there was a comment that came in from Piki. Okay, so she heard it as divine Indian. So it's divine in you that she said. Okay, there. So if you look on the side, you can also see the comments coming in, Ashu. Um,
I cannot.
you're
There.
probably on
Got
the
it, got
private
it,
chat.
got it. No, I got, yeah, yeah, yeah. I got it.
Okay. So as you said it, Vicky asked divine Indian, and then you corrected while I asked, and so she says, "Oh, okay, fine. That's what it is." All right. And we have Vidya watching. Hi, Vidya, and hi. Who else
Hi,
is
Vidya.
watching?
Hi, Vicky.
Leave us a comment so that we can acknowledge you for giving us your time. Ask us any questions that you might have on inner voice. And yes, we are going to keep moving forward. We've got Rohit who has joined. Thank you, Rohit, for joining. He says, the divine in you. How do you perceive this thought?
Is it a thought or I don't think it's a thought. It's a feeling. How do I perceive it? It's just a sense of knowing. Like, how do you know your intuition, your instinct? You say, my intuition told me it's so, my instinct told me so. I call it inner voice. Call it any word that works for you.
Hmm,
And it is beyond us, whether you call it consciousness. uh, there are just so many words that this goes by.
true. Um, Ashu, my question to you is, we're looking at listening to our inner voice, but sometimes you are not sure whether it's your inner voice or it's something you heard from somebody else. So how do you then identify whether it is your own inner voice, inner calling, intuition, consciousness, or is it conditioning from external sources that is going on?
It takes tremendous practice to understand the difference. Uh, our body actually is a very finely tuned mechanism or tool, you can say. It's really finely tuned. When you are happy, your body behaves differently. When you're sad, your body behaves differently. When you're angry, it behaves differently. When you're at ease, it behaves differently. When you're centered. So it's a lot of tuning into how your whole self is feeling. Are you feeling really at ease and grounded? Are you feeling agitated, restless? Uh, are you feeling confused and anxious? So it's a lot about really tuning into. And sometimes, even with all the practice, it is difficult to understand. And that is why there is this culture of having, whether it's is coaches or gurus or a mentor, somebody who can be a reflective mirror and be that objective observer to help you understand yourself.
True.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of practice.
Hmm. And so, going back to Rohit's question, he had asked about the divine in you. How do you perceive this thought? You said it was a feeling. And to add to that, he said, I thought it is a divine connected to spirituality.
Can you explain that to me? What is it that he is divine connected to spirituality?
I thought it is divine connected to spirituality. When he says, when you say divine in you, so is it a thought? You said it's a feeling. And he is asking whether it is connected to spirituality.
Yes, it is spiritual. It is spirituality. After all, the science of life is spirituality. That is what spirituality is. The science of life. There is a way of living life. There is a right way to living life. Whether you call it duty, dharma, uh, different religions or different communities may call it different words, but the way we are made has not changed.
True.
So, yes, it is connected to spirituality.
We have another question. He asks, does the body give signs before some event is about to happen?
A lot of us can sense, we sense energy change. Energy. What are we? We are also energy, end of the day. We are all just atoms packed together. And those energy atoms are always in motion. That's what dynamism is all about, because that's how, whether it is aging or breathing or anything, it's all about it being in motion is happening. uh, so yes, we can sense changes in energies. Some people are more attuned to those changes or more sensitive to it, and some are less. uh, but it's how we perceive those changes is how we express ourselves differently. Some people are more fearful of heights, and some may be more fearful of water. Each one of us has different tunings and frequencies. So yes, we do pick up.
And again, I believe this is more of you hone it through practice.
Absolutely, you hone it through practice, because what happens is, it's about directing that sensitivity inwards rather than constantly outwards. The more you direct that sensitivity inwards, the more you get sensitized to the environment around you. And you start really understanding or listening beyond the words, observing beyond, noticing more expansively, rather than being tunnel visioned.
So, what essentially was it that you heard or you listened to in your life that led you to the path that you are on right now? Because
So
as far as I remember, you come from a corporate world. Can
I
you tell
do
me?
indeed.
Yes, please
I
tell us
do
about it.
indeed. Um, and I actually work with corporates, so it's not as if I've left the corporate world,
Yes,
but
of
I
course. But you
simply
know what I
chose
mean.
to be outside of it rather than inside of it. Uh, it was a lot of transitions of life which had me questioning what is the relevance and value of my life, what should I do with myself. uh, More importantly, I had a very freak incident of getting stung by about 100 bees in the heart of in the city in Singapore. Life-threatening accident, which totally was a moment of awakening for me. Made me really reflect, sit back, and ask myself. And this was a second face off with death that I experienced. This was more horrific. The first one I treated as an accident, the second one made me sit up. And I think when you have something like that the second time, you don't just bless the fact that you're alive. I think you start questioning there's a reason why you're still there. And it made me ask that there has to be a reason why I'm still here. And I need to figure out what that reason is, as to what am I supposed to do with myself. Am I listening to my feelings, or have I think it was also a realization that somewhere in the clutter clamor of what you call the conditioning, the beliefs, the social conditionings, the very tried and tested path that one tends to live of, um, or I would call it tried and tested. In my case, I come from a, middle class back family where you grew up, you went to school, college, studied, worked, got married, had kids. So there was nothing out of the ordinary in that sense happening. Um, but had I ever questioned myself very deeply? Not really. I think I just went with the flow. And this made me sit up and question, what do I want? And what is it that my feelings are trying to say to me? What is it that's going on? So, in this whole search, little by little by little, through lots of explorations, because I had no way of, nobody to ask, no way of understanding, nowhere to even consider that I could ask anybody. Let me put it that way. I didn't even think I could ask anyone. Uh, just went about trying to do various things to figure out how to express myself differently. And through all of that, I I think I started figuring out what I'm not. Because to even know who you are, need to know where you don't fit in, where you fit in and where you don't. It's sometimes a process of negation to then coming to the process of acknowledgement and validation. And it's through that I came to discovering that leadership development was much needed in India, or call it the world in general. It was a relatively less focused on space. And that's how I stepped out of the corporate world to say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And it's through that little by little, again, through that search of how do I go about leadership development, I met this beautiful soul, this beautiful lady who questioned me at my deepest core and asked me as to what is it that was making me behave in this erratic way of sometimes being awfully friendly and nice and sometimes being awfully cynical and judgmental. And another moment to sit up and question myself. And that's where, when that questioning little is where I discovered I'd stopped listening to my intuition. It was talking to me, my voice, and I had suppressed it so deep. I had absolutely stopped even knowing it existed for me. So, yeah, that's where the relationship began again.
Beautiful. And why do you think people suppress that inner voice?
It's not intentional. We just don't know any other way. It's society, our system, in our education system, our social system is a very conformist system. It's all about fitting in. And often because first and foremost, let's understand that the human being wants a sense of belonging and community. We are all seeking to be accepted. We want a sense of community. In that sense of community, belonging, accepting, we start identifying with communities, groups, beliefs, which make us feel that it is the right thing to do. That this is right, only if I do this will I be accepted. And in playing that game of acceptance, we lose ourselves along the way. So it's really a question of just ignorance and unknowing, not intentional.
True. Vicky says the outer world is where we concentrate on. So true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she has another question for you. She was the one who asked about does the body give signs? And Rohit, I'll come to your question right after hers. She asked about spine sensitivity.
See, where you feel sensitized or sensitive is very personal. It could be spine, it could be tingling anywhere, it's a very personal bodily experience. I cannot tell you where it could be for you or for anybody. Some feel it in the hand, some feel flutters in the stomach, some feel flutters in the heart. You say, I'm feeling something here. It's very, very personal. But if your body alerts you, listen to it, ask it, what's it trying to say?
You know, I like what you said. Ask it what it's trying to say, because a lot of the times we ask that question because we know we're supposed to ask that question, but then we don't wait for the answer. We just ask and then we go on with the rest of our day on autopilot, and your body is like trying to speak to you, but you're not there to listen to it because you're busy with your day. So it's important to ask and then wait. It's kind of like on LinkedIn, you send somebody a message and then you disappear. You're not waiting for the answer, but the answer will eventually come. It's just about having that patience that the answer will come.
Very well said. Patience is a very, very strong virtue and is lacking in most of us because we are very often, Rukia, caught up with instant gratification. And we've become so impatient with technology being in the, like WhatsApps or anything. We want instant messaging coming to us, instant answer. Someone doesn't respond, you're convinced that the person, we start making assumptions. Doesn't care, doesn't want to write. There are just so many assumptions we clutter our head with. Uh, it could just well be that something may have happened or whatever it is, or just ask, has something happened that you haven't responded?
True. And it happens. I mean, given the times that we are in, I share my calendar link with people, and people have to book a little in advance. So, and if someone doesn't show up, my instant thing is, I hope everything is okay, because times are so different now. And people can forget, that's also possible. But the better question to ask is not, why did you not show up, but is everything okay? Just come from a place of concern. That is so different from pouncing at people. So yes, we have a good question from Rohit again. I'm going to just highlight it there for your convenience. He says, "What has been your greatest challenge in your work till date? Leadership development is difficult, if I say so. How has been your transition from corporate world to leadership development? We can learn a lot more from your diverse experiences." Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Rohit. That's a very good question, very real challenge, and great question to ask. Thank you for that. What has been my greatest challenge is leaders thinking, many of them, that they don't need development.
I like that.
All of us, as human beings, are students of life till the end of our life. When people feel they have arrived and they know it all, I think that is the day you stagnate, you're stuck, and that is when you really need help. Because you've stopped listening, you've stopped being inclusive, you've stopped collaborating, and it is difficult sometimes to work with such people. And more often than not, it is these people who are, I mean, such leaders who actually are the most scared to ask for help because they're most concerned about being vulnerable. It is the pressure of, the pressure of having to appear perfect, having to appear know it all. Because I'm a leader, it is that sense of sometimes responsibility or pressure that over time becomes a dawned persona, and they don't even realize it, that they have donned a persona out of that whole sense of pressure. Or maybe they were running so fast down a train, actually at one time knowing more and better, but somewhere they lost touch with the changes that happened around them. Yes, it is the ego.
is the ego. Gosh, I love that. So it's leaders who don't know that they need development. So how do you actually then communicate and get to that point of, openness and shedding of the ego?
So first and foremost, stories are one of the most powerful thing. If you look at history, life in general, history is stories, mythology, religion. We all have stories. Everything is fables, stories. The best way to get a message across. In India, we may use sometimes the Mahabharata, sometimes Ramayana, sometimes something else. But stories are a great way to communicate. The second thing is that start with always validating what they've achieved. I would say that is fundamental because till you don't acknowledge the ego that is there, is it even open to listening what you want to say? And after that, you can ask that what are the challenges that you face as a leader? I think that is one thing that all leaders face challenges. And when you talk about, like just today, I was with a gentleman who's about 65 plus. And he kept talking about how he's trying to be fair by his family. And at some point, we were talking, and I said, okay, how can you be fair about this? And at some point, I realized he was not talking about fairness. He was actually talking about his family history and he wanted his sentiments valued. And the minute I shifted to saying, I absolutely respect the sentiments you're coming from, he said, thank you very much. Till then, we had a conversation on two different wavelengths happening. So I think it really starts with you value their sentiments and then you say, okay, now what's the challenge? How can I be of, would you like to talk about it? And have you considered this? So, you go in a very exploratory manner, go in a manner which is open, which is, like I said, really about letting them lead the conversation. Uh, Leaving it open for them to decide when they are ready to share and finding the right moment to step in then. You do find an opening, but it is finding that right moment, and that requires so much patience and so much of awareness that you don't step into the conversation too early sometimes.
So true. You spoke about leadership in the corporate space, and that was the question brought to you. Rohit says, well said, ma'am. Leaders think that they have acquired so much that now they feel they don't need training. So true. So, yes, I'm going to take you a step back and talk about leadership in the family.
It's
So,
no
yes,
different.
corporate. Exactly. So, yes, please tell us a little about that.
I would ask you, do you see it
Okay.
any different in your culture, in corporate or in family?
Actually, no, that was just a trick question. Because sometimes people see it differently, right? People expect that. Actually, my concept of leadership in the family is that every member needs to be a leader,
Yeah.
first for themselves and then in the combined space. So if you can't be a leader yourself within the family as a person as a unit of the family, then you're going to fall behind and then you're going to look at somebody else for leadership. You're going to look up to someone else for leadership within the family. And then if that person is not taking you the way you want to go, then you're constantly going to be in that tug of war of ego and that struggle of unsatisfaction in
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, totally. There's a vacuum that stays, and you have to close your own vacuum.
Absolutely. And what about those of us who are hesitant to be our own leaders?
However long you stay hesitant, life has a way of kicking you. So, so all I can say is, the longer you hesitate, the more kicks you get, the quicker you choose to get up, the fewer kicks you get.
Right. Tell us more.
No, no, that's really it.
That's really it. Okay. Okay. Because, I mean, I do agree with you. All right. We have a question. Thank you, Kunan. Kunan says leader can be only one, husband or wife, who shall lead the family. Ah, a different way of thinking.
Kunan, I call at home. I say actually it's a partnership, or even at work, it's always a partnership. One may take a higher responsibility for managing, but it's always a partnership. Uh, because otherwise, your kids play you one against the other. Honestly, they're smarter than they also pick on that. And again,
So,
it comes back to if only one leads, I think somewhere it catches up.
so, I'd love to hear from Kunan. What are your thoughts on each one person within the family unit needs to be a leader for themselves? And when I say for themselves, I'm not saying that each one of you take it in a different direction, because a tug of war of egos and conversations, but at least to know what your values are, to understand what makes you come alive, what is important for you. That's what I meant when I said each one of us needs to be a leader. And yeah, a leader can be only one, but I guess in every situation, the leader, you can exchange roles, as Ashu beautifully said, it's a partnership. And that's how it evolves. Good question, says Piki. Good question. Is it a good question from Rajesh? So yes, Rajesh says, when do you feel the need to challenge a client, and how do you do that without treading on their egos?
Hi, Rajesh. Good to see you here. So, when do you feel the need to challenge a client? I don't know if it's about really challenging a client, or it's uh, being true to yourself and saying what you're observing. So, when you are true to yourself and sharing an observation, uh, it is all right. But again, it's about listening to your self internally to know, is it the right time to share that observation, and how. uh, you can seek permission and share it. You can share it directly, uh, or just put it out as an observation. It's all about the relationship you have with the client and the conversation. It's very hard for me to say when and how is the right way.
True that.
It's very
And
situational, conversational.
true, true. And also, I think when and I like playing the devil's advocate. So when you're challenging the client, is that your ego coming in the picture?
Not necessarily. You could purely be would see challenge could just be it's about, I think, sometimes a wordplay. It could be just being provocative. You could be provoking them to think deeper, which is okay. It's your role to do so as a coach.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but why tread on the ego? It's only happens when your ego comes in the way. That's when the treading on the ego happens.
That's where I was taking you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Vidya. Vidya says, does the inner voice get affected in the family tug of war? How does the non leader deal with this? Thank you, Vidya, for the question.
Okay, let me think. So, does the inner voice get affected in a family tug of war? Yes, it does. Because we get trapped in this concept called family. Uh, in reality, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience here to grow. as human beings, and our family is the are the souls who've come in our life to push us upwards. And that is why they are your family, whether through challenge or through nurturing. Both have a role to play,
Hmm.
because nurturing also is needed, challenging. I call it like the sun. The sun is not always gentle. The sun is harsh, the sun is gentle, the sun sets, the sun is quiet. You have, from dusk to dawn, you go through all shades of light. And that's what love is like. It goes through all shades, and you'll have all shades in your life, in your relationships, in your friendships, in everything. So, does the inner voice get affected? Yes. It is really about firstly understanding what is causing the tug of war internally. What is the war that you have internally? What are you warring with yourself on? Is it some fear? Is it some attachment? Is it some assumption, some expectation? It's all about sitting back and questioning yourself. And the more you sit back and question yourself, the more you will firstly realize that it could be any of these. And you'll see patterns of behaviors coming up. And that's where you are able to identify what is going on. How does a non leader deal with it? Ask for support with somebody you feel safe. Take support of somebody you feel safer with. Share it. And I think if you can say it out, that whether you are conflicted or hurt or pained, I think that's another way to put your, whatever the impact that tug of war is having on you, put it out there if you can. But remember, you're not alone. There is every family that has the same play going on in different shades.
True. So, how does the non-leader deal with this? You said reach out to somebody who you can take support from. Now, does this someone have to be someone within the family? Because maybe there is nobody in the family that this non-leader can reach out to. So, does thank you, Rajesh.
Not
And
necessary. Thank you. So, not necessarily. Uh, it doesn't have to be. There are so many relationships in the world. Make one of your own, whether it's a friend, a guide, a coach, a mentor, a confidant. Could be a sibling, could be a cousin, could be anybody. Really, as I said, it's who do you feel safe with? And sometimes it could be a counselor. That's why we have all these practitioners. It really can be anyone.
true. So, Vidya, I hope that answers your question. If you would like to add or add anything to it, do type it in and we'll get to it. Kunan says, thanks, Ashu Khanna ji, great insights. Thank you.
Thank you
And
very much for that.
and Rajesh says, stimulating conversation, Rukaya. Thank you so much. Vidya says, thank you. Thanks, Ashu, for the profound reply. Indeed, a crucial area to ponder upon.
Thank you for that, Vidya.
Super. So we spoke about coaching. We spoke about reaching out to a coach, perhaps a counselor. There are so many of us who can support people who might need to be looking at what needs to happen next. Now, your very first bit. Okay, there's another question. Let's just go to questions because that's what we're here for, guys. Thank you so much for making this conversation stimulating. It's you who adds value. It's you who brings more, insights and takes the lead and helps us flow. So thank you so much for the questions. Kunan says, if we live in present without any judgment of self and others, will the inner voice still be there?
It's always there, my dear friend. It never goes away. It's we who stop listening to it. So, yes, when we live in the present, you can know it more.
Right. I'm just wondering from that question, Kanan, what would be your definition of the inner voice? So, inner voice isn't always the one that is looking for judgment. Inner voice is also something that gives you direction. So, Ashu, what's your definition of the inner voice? And again, I'm just following up with Kunal's question here.
I'll probably this time ask you, what do you call it?
What do I call the inner voice?
How do you describe it or know it or call it?
My inner voice is always that tiny little voice that I can hear that says, "Try again," or that says, "No, not this time." This doesn't feel right. There's just something that I feel. It doesn't even sometimes it doesn't even have to be a voice. Sometimes it's just that knot you feel in the stomach and your body, and you're listening, because I believe that communication is not just about the words you're using or a conversation. Communication could just be a headache that might suddenly show up, or that uneasy feeling that you have before making a phone call you know so yeah, that for me is the inner voice.
So, absolutely. And yes, it is the higher self. Yes, it is the consciousness. And I often laugh. The more if I'm trying to convince myself on something, that means the more I need to back off and ask myself, do I need to do that or not? That means the ego is playing a higher role than the higher self at that time.
Absolutely. So yes, awesome. Your first book is called I Am Freedom,
Indeed.
and I'd like to know more about it. And I'm sure the listeners would like to know, because Ashu here has got four books to her cap, like four feathers in her hat already. And I'd like to know about I Am Freedom.
Okay. So, thank you for that. And my book, my journey as an author started with just wanting to pen down what I was discovering within all these insights. Like when you ask yourself, what does success mean to you? Now, I had never sat back and even asked myself, what does success mean to me? It just meant constantly aiming to get the outcome I wanted. That's it. And if I get it, I'm successful. If I didn't, I'm a failure. It was a very limited definition. And at some point you say, okay, what does success mean to me? Because you go through some series of failures, and then you realize that actually if you limit yourself to just success and failure being less than and more than outcomes, then you're always playing in that little box, because outcomes are anyway not dependent on me at all times. They can be uncontrollable at times, so there had to be something else. And I really changed it to just being true to myself is my measure. That's it. I said, let's just constantly working with myself is my measure. I don't want to get into this domain of success and failure. Now, as I started getting into all these insights, I started penning them down because they were very freeing. Uh, it took away so much of that pressure off my shoulders, my head, everything, and my those knots in the stomach started opening out. And lots of such questions I had with myself, because we talk about perfection, we talk about uh, so many social conditionings and beliefs. And I had started introspecting, and as these insights came, the whole freedom that I started experiencing with these perceptions getting cleared out is how the book title emerged as I Am Freedom. Now, the title I Am Freedom means the inner self is always free. It gets obstructed by our perceptions. It has got nothing to do with its true nature. So that's how the first book got titled I Am Free, and it's all about questioning my perceptions.
Beautiful. I was on a talk show 2 days ago, and interestingly, one of the questions was, "What is success to you?"
And
And my answer was, this might sound cliche, but when I am able to smile with a lot of satisfaction, when I can go to bed with a smile on my face. I know I'm not selling the smile strategy, but that's what it is, right? When you're smiling from within, when you're satisfied that you've made a difference to somebody, and if not anybody else, at least to yourself. If you've showed
yeah,
up for yourself, if you've had a good day, that is success for me. Success is not surplus of anything else. Success for me is very internal. So yeah.
true that. That's what it's about, just being true to yourself. Just every night feeling, falling asleep saying, I did
I did
okay.
good. I did good.
I did good.
Gosh, yeah. So yes, I showed up for myself. I did what was important for me, and even if not doing anything in the day was what you intended to do, if you wanted to take a chill day, if you wanted to just kind of relax, unwind, just give yourself that time, even that is success, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Self care is as much needed as anything else.
Um, your another frame that you talk about is be limitless.
Being limitless is really okay. So, being limitless is about really tapping into that infinite in us. Uh, and we forget that from childhood to death, there are so many roles we play. Uh, we play so many roles, we play so many characters, we do so many things. And I think sometimes we forget and we shortchange ourselves. We keep just living in the flow and just going with it. And then um, there's a there's a very dear family friend of ours who has recently been in touch with me saying, he says, I'm 75 and I'm really asking myself, what did I do with my life? And that's what it is about, that are you really asking yourself and consciously unleashing those roles and expressions and potential, or are you just going with the flow and not taking a step back, recalibrating, reimagining, redesigning your life and saying, hey, what's possible for me beyond? And there's so much possible for us beyond. When you ask me, Rukaya, about from corporate to coach, uh, coach is really an observer. It's really being that observer who can look at life objectively and can objectively start harnessing, seeing the patterns in life and start harnessing opportunities, potential, identifying. And it is so for me to have evolved from a chartered accountant to being a leadership coach, author, speaker, chapter leader, and entrepreneur is all thanks to the fact that I have consciously listened internally and lived in alignment with myself, with a clear vision of I want to live true to me, my higher self. And I want to be true to my higher self. So just every day and living that. And we are ultimately we are in a life of coexistence, me and the world, at all times. The inner self is getting expressed externally in the outer world. So what are the new expressions that I am constantly discovering for myself, which are serving the world?
Yep.
And it's only when they serve the world can you keep on unfolding and unfolding that infinite potential. And that's why I call it being limitless, because whether it's in a relationship or finding many more communities and relationship, we can keep expanding. We have so much capacity to expand, it's amazing. When you look at there are just so many global large conglomerates which have multiple businesses and all of that. It's all expansion, end of the day, of a leader who has chosen to go beyond boundaries.
True, true, true. Absolutely true. And as you say, coaches are observers. Thank you, Rajesh. Uh, I think for my definition of what a coach is coach is literally like that light that comes into a dark cave with the client, where the client doesn't really know what's in there, what is possible, whether there's a little alleyway on the side, whether there's a little, a flow of water, a fountain somewhere inside. So the coach literally walks with you, and you have the capacity through your questions to either sharpen the light or dim it down as per the convenience of the client and the acceptance and readiness of the client. So this for me is how a coach should be. So yes, absolutely. We walk with the client, we observe with them, and we see what needs to get done for them. And there is one more question from Kunen. He says, what do you suggest to practice to live in flow state, aligning the body, mind, and spirit with the universe every moment? Thank you.
Great question, Kuren. Thank you for asking. There are many practices. Each one of us finds what works for us. For some, chanting may be good. For some people, meditation. Some people, pranayam. There are many who, just run every morning. That's their way of centering themselves. Music, singing, writing is a great anchor for me. I find that very effective. You have to find what works for you to pause and be with yourself, and just allow at that time where that fog disappears and you can see with clarity. So it
You
could be
said
anything.
could be anything, and be with yourself is what really jumped at me when as you were speaking. um, a lot of us during lockdown actually went through depression because we had to be with ourselves.
Being with yourself does not mean not being in action. uh, Depression really comes when I understand it is very tough to stay in, because being alone is not easy.
True.
uh,
And sorry to interrupt you, guys. Before you get me wrong, I did not mean to laugh about the depression part, but it was more about getting to know yourself. So let me just clarify on that. Yes, Ashu, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you for that. So, it is difficult to be alone. It is difficult. Human beings are, end of the day, social animals. We are people who want to be on the move. We're not designed to be sitting in, caged in. And it's a feeling of caged in that happens. Am I caged in? Now, some are at peace being in one place, and some are not. Uh, can it be tough? Absolutely. Has there been, I think, the maximum amount of depression cases that have come up in the last year plus? Sadly, yes. Uh, but I think it's also to do with the fact that, do we feel comfortable reaching out and being vulnerable? I think we start, the more you fall into this pit of I'm alone, it's like a vicious cycle then. You're getting yourself into a whirlpool. So it's a lot about back to connecting with people and staying connected, staying in action. Uh, just doing things which will occupy you rather than make you feel sad. Because an emotion, if it just sticks with you, can be hard to shake off. But if you tell yourself, okay, I know I'm right now feeling sad, how about I do something to distract it?
Hmm.
So you acknowledge the emotion, you don't dismiss it. You acknowledge it, because it's okay to be sad. We all go through our shades of emotions. But then you say, okay, let's do something else rather than just sitting here and mopping about it and moping and going on and on and on about it, because how much good will it serve? But somebody here just now raised a question for non-leader like people. Can all of us have the capacity to step out of it? No, and I empathize and sympathize with that soul that is stuck sometimes, that person that sometimes feels stuck. And that is when I think the best thing you can do is reach out and say, I am stuck. Can you help? And you will always find so many others at that moment saying, I too feel stuck. Or I was stuck once upon a time. It's amazing the relatability that you'll find.
I think somewhere it feels assuring to know that I'm not alone. I think it feels comfortable to know that others are also uncomfortable, and we're not alone feeling this way. I mean, it's because I think the expectation from community is that you have to be comfortable, you have to be strong, you've got this, so it's okay if some days you don't have it, and some days you're not feeling all right. It's okay.
There's just now the Olympian who stepped out, and there's a big Allison, I forget her second name, and there's a big magazine cover which says, it's okay to be not okay.
Hmm.
And that's really what it is. It's we who put pressure. The society puts pressure about, you got to be strong, you got this, get on with it, just do it. No, sometimes it's you can't. It's fine. Yeah, we all have bad days.
It happens, and what I was trying to share was, when a person is by themselves, sometimes we have been so busy with living our lives, with with existing, let's just call that existing, going on autopilot, that we haven't come to discover who we are and what we like, or what brings us alive. And because we haven't, sometimes being on our own could be a little overwhelming.
Very true. So, if you go for meditation retreats, when you go, so I've been for Vipassana, and the first 3 days often for people are the toughest because you are in silence and you're with yourself. Many people break down and find it challenging to not engage with anybody, not engage with technology, not even look into the eyes of another, and just spend time with themselves. And facing up to yourself or getting to know yourself is the most difficult thing to do. It's the most courageous task. So that is so true. It can be overwhelming. Are you ready to face up to who you are and what you've been up to and what you missed out or what you messed up or what you did or what you didn't do, all of that?
True. So, as I can see, we are 2 minutes short of the hour. I just want you to share with us, in closing comments, um, how do you actually listen to your inner voice? How can you be honest with your inner voice?
Compassion. So when you asked me the question, I gave myself time to find the right word and say it out. That's it.
Beautiful. Beautifully demonstrated, beautifully shared. And as I said, I've just known Ashu for less than a month. It's been what, 3 weeks? That's it. I don't even think more than 3 weeks. But she came across as warm, she came across as authentic, and something within us just clicked. And I just had to have her on board. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for giving us your time. The questions, the conversations, the engagement. It was so worth it. Thank you again, Ashu, and everybody else.
So thank you very much to everybody for being here and to you, Rukaya, for inviting me and for this platform. I really appreciate the conversation, the questions, very insightful, very deep, and I didn't even realize an hour had gone by.
We could go on talking forever. It almost feels
Yeah.
like it. So
So,
Rajesh says, thank you for a great conversation. Listening to Ashu is always mind-opening. Kunen also says, thanks a lot, Rukaya ji and Ashu ji, for a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. now and on the replay, because I am sure you will enjoy catching up on the replay if you've missed the live. And if you are new to the channel, before I forget, do subscribe, give the host a pat on the back. Thank you so much and have a
And
good.
before we close, one big smile to for the
Yes.
camera.
Bye bye. Good night, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you
Good
for
night.
joining.